There's some indecisiveness in the air. But I promise you, I don't take this lightly. My fantasy draft, it's an important job. I need someone I can trust, and the fantasy footballers are my number one guys. Their ultimate draft kit is the everything I need to get ready for my drafts. Don't dance with the devil in a pale moonlight. Jump on over to www.ultimatedraftkit.com. Without it, you just might be a dead man.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from pristineauction.com studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Welcome in. The Fantasy Footballers Podcast back again. Andy, Mike, and Jason. It's Thursday. It's April 4th. We're just a few short weeks away from the NFL Draft. And these are the early ranking shows. In fact, this is the second early running backs rankings show. And it is going to be a fun one. I actually, part one, stellar. Great.
Excellent.
The sequel's probably better. Right?
Wow. Well,
which is a rarity. It's a rarity.
You usually, Jason and I had this discussion a couple days ago about trilogies.
Yeah.
And the entire point of the sequel in a trilogy is just to make sure that the third movie is always the best.
Yeah, set up to succeed. The sequel, it brings you down, but not this one.
No.
Not this one.
Because there's no third.
Right, we're not going into these RB3s yet in the early rankings. But the reality is, like when we talked last episode, we go into some specifics on, why the top guys, maybe why to avoid some of the top guys, but they're all pretty excellent. Like that's why they're in the top 10. These for fantasy, I feel like this is so much more important to discuss the guys that are those RB2s. Can they be an RB1? Are they going to fall out?
There's so much more disparity between our individual rankings on these guys, running backs 11 through as many as we can get through today, probably get to 20, 25 guys in total. So I'm excited. There are several players that, I don't know, we're probably 5, 6, 7 spots off on. And so we'll debate a little bit more on the show today, the merits and where these guys belong. Very excited about that. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at the FF Ballers, Instagram, YouTube, and ad-free. You can listen to us ad-free on Stitcher Premium. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen. We appreciate your support. We appreciate those reviews. This independent podcast goes year-round, and you guys are why we do it. So we thank you very much for supporting us. Couple other notes real quick. Still got a giveaway going on, a signed Michael Thomas jersey. We're giving it away on the website. For free. It's one of those giveaways where we give it away.
It's not just like a product for sale?
No.
We're selling a Michael Thomas jersey.
Yeah.
New business model.
It's a new model. We sell one thing. We sell one thing per show, but this one we're selling for free, okay? Got it?
Got it.
But we're only selling it to one of you. FootClanGiveaway.com. You can enter. It is free, as Mike said. Also, there are a couple of brand new articles. If you are just itching, like the draft, it's coming, but you're like, I wish it were here yesterday, and I need to read about some of these guys.
If it was yesterday, I would have missed it.
You would have? Because you didn't have the channel on, or what?
No, because if it's yesterday, then today is today, and that was yesterday, and the draft's already over, and I missed it.
Where did they go? Where did the good players go?
I don't know.
Oh, because
I missed it.
All right.
I didn't see any of it.
Just a bad joke is all.
Notre Dame wide receiver Miles Boykin, Ole Miss wide receiver A.J. Brown, both of those reception perception articles up on the website. Here is the quick question for the day. This one comes in off of Twitter from Jake. He says, which remaining free agent are you most surprised has not found a home? We're about to jump into the news. We're going to talk about a couple of free agents that did find homes between last show and today. But who are the most surprising names that you you can't believe they're out there. I mean, teams are missing out.
There's
Jason stole mine.
There's not too many people out there that I'm like, man, how have they not signed? Except for one, to me, it's T.J. Yeldon. I mean, T.J. Yeldon is a serviceable NFL running back who's 25 years old. He was 4 picks away from being a first-round selection in the NFL draft. He is a pass-catching back. So in today's NFL, where committees are happening and they want to bring in a pass-catching back, he's a big-bodied, young, highly drafted guy. I don't know if he's asking for too much money or just waiting for the right opportunity. Maybe he'll wait until after the NFL draft. But I am shocked he hasn't signed. I literally just drafted him in our startup dynasty draft, and it felt super yucky because he doesn't have a team. But I'm like, if he had signed with anyone, he goes several rounds earlier.
Here's why I think he's unsigned. He doesn't really fit one role well. He is a depth back. He is not a great between the tackles runner. He is not a pigeonholed pass catching phenomenon, right? He's not going out there. Although last year he did have 55 receptions, but he kind of does everything fine. Now
That's why it's shocking he doesn't have a job.
It is got to be depressing to T.J. Yeldon, the person that Alfred Blue now has a job, and he doesn't.
He has his job.
Yeah.
And he has his job. Okay, so T.J. Yeldon's yours. Mine is Jay Ajayi, although I know teams are apprehensive about the knees. He's still, to me, a more proven game-changing type of running back than T.J. Yeldon is. I'm surprised that he doesn't have a home. He visited the Colts, but I do think teams, I guess they're just questioning the durability.
Yeah, the problem with Jay Ajayi is what you said is the problem is his knee. And you said that, but like if it was just his knee, he's coming off the knee injury that took him out for the season. Except it is knees,
Or if it was just the other knee with arthritis.
right? But it's both,
yeah.
not the bee's knees.
No.
Not at all.
If he had the bee's knees, he'd have a team. Mike,
that is very true.
Who is your surprising free agent that hasn't found a home?
Delighting the young demo with bee's knees references.
Well, I agree with one of yours and disagree with the other.
That's fine, but
Try to guess which is which.
It was T.J. Yeldon who I'm surprised. But for a couple wide receivers that I'm a little surprised they haven't found a landing spot yet, Chris Hogan and Michael Crabtree. Yes, I know, Andy, you think that Michael Crabtree is 100% done. I don't think he's done. He's not what he used to be. He's not even probably 80% of what he used to be. But the NFL needs pass catchers, and to be a possession guy, Michael Crabtree, I think, can still get that job done. And Chris Hogan showcased here and there with the Patriots what he could do. But I guess if the Pats didn't want him back, then nobody wants him back.
Yeah, I don't know how much either guy has left in the tank. I feel like Chris Hogan is more competitive than Michael Crabtree is from what we've seen. And so I tend to think that Hogan will find a job before Crabtree does, but we'll see. I don't think either one's going to change a team. I don't think either one's going to make you happy in fantasy.
Crabtree and Hogan are the two most surprising wide receivers at this point that haven't been signed, and I think that shows you how incredibly bad this year's free agent pool of wide receivers were.
Yeah, we need the draft, guys. We need the draft to come.
It's a good year. It's a deep year, I feel like, for wide receivers.
Record deepness.
News and notes from around the league, presented by Sleeper.
All right, the Lions have signed running back C.J. Anderson, formerly of the Rams, to a one-year contract. Nothing gave me more joy than knowing that Jason's Patronus, his spirit animal, C.J. Anderson, has gone to disrupt his favorite player.
Yeah,
although I don't think he really will.
No, I mean, look, part of me is really excited. Just because, hey, my two guys are together.
Hanging out.
They're hanging out. They're
probably
best friends.
Yeah.
But it also sucks for both of them for fantasy a little bit. I mean, look, we knew, when Malcolm Brown signed the tender or the offer sheet.
The chicken.
with man, Mike,
you were having an off day.
You
were having a rough day.
when he signed the offer sheet with the Lions, I said this is pretty much best case scenario because you knew they were going to bring someone in. Then Malcolm Brown got signed, by the Rams. They took him back. CJ comes. And what's the difference really between CJ Anderson and Malcolm Brown? I mean, they're both okay guys. Neither one is a true game changer that's just going to demand 15 carries a game. And we'll talk a lot about Kerryon Johnson today because he's in our rankings and he's one of the guys.
Not anymore, not after this signing.
He's one of the players that we have the largest disagreement on.
Now, the nice thing is we don't have a precedent with Matt Patricia of using some kind of okay, oversized bruiser to disrupt the workload of Kerryon Johnson.
Especially when he's just inefficient, and
right.
yet we keep giving the ball, especially at the goal line.
If we had that precedent, Mike, at the goal line, I'd be concerned.
Now, real quick, to interject, LeGarrette Blount was also like BFFs with Matt Patricia from his Patriots days. There is no such personal connection between C.J. Anderson and Matt Patricia.
How do you know?
I have looked it up. I'm paid to know.
What, do you think they're logging their diary entries here?
And second, Kerryon Johnson in limited games had a great utilization around the goal line. So if we feel like LeGarrette Blount was already getting that, then
here's the reality. That regardless, whether it was Blount or Anderson or Malcolm Brown or anonymous draft pick X, Kerryon's workload was going to increase. His production was going to increase this year. He is going to take a step forward. If he stays healthy, he will be an impact player. We'll talk about him later. Duke Johnson's rep has asked the Browns to trade him. Probably the only player that wants out of Cleveland right now, the way that the hype train is going. Browns have been in no hurry to trade Duke Johnson because his cap number in 2019 is only $3 million. And they don't really have a rush job to do so. The cap hit doesn't change a whole lot if they trade him before or after June 1st. And so I guess I should ask the question, do we want Duke Johnson as fantasy owners to be traded?
In Week 8.
That's what you want?
When Kareem is back? You mean Week 9?
Yes, in Week 9 when Kareem Hunt gets back, we say, Duke, you did your job. Go get us a draft pick.
I'd like him to be traded because I think Duke Johnson has fantasy value. He has a lot to offer teams if he found the right spot. I think he's a good running back. He's a great pass-catching running back.
I'll take Duke Johnson over T.J. Yeldon in a heartbeat.
Sure, and that's the perfect example of what you're talking about. He's
Fills
a specialist
role
in a certain area. He's a better pass-catching back than T.J. Yeldon.
All right, let's go ahead and jump into this beautiful signing.
Mediocre signing of the week.
This one stings a little bit.
Why you got to do him like this?
I know. Raiders have signed wide receiver Ryan Grant, formerly of the Colts, formerly of the Ravens. 1-year contract, supposed to be worth up to something like $2 million. Ryan Grant, if you remember last offseason, signed a 4-year, $29 million deal, only he didn't because the Ravens said, no thanks, pass.
Well, yeah. Michael Crabtree.
Yeah, I was going to say, they went, Michael Crabtree's out there.
Yeah, how'd that work out? So Ryan Grant, he may not even make the team, but he's a depth player on the Raiders. He's fantasy irrelevant. Is that it for news? Are we good?
Yeah.
All right, that is it for news and notes today. We're going to get into early running back rankings. I do want to remind people, switch your Dynasty League over to Sleeper. They're adding new features all the time. Just go download the app. It's free. It's not a paid platform. Just go do it. It's a great platform. Check it out. I promise you'll like it. And a quick reminder to check out the Ultimate Draft Kit. You heard the intro.
The very timely intro.
What? Because we had the Joker.
Yeah, we had a good friend of the show, Jackie N.
Jackie N. Yeah. Nobody calls him that.
What? Send in the car.
Yes.
What?
I didn't mean to do that. I don't know why Derek Carr is being sent in.
It's probably just because of the huge Ryan Grant news.
Yes.
Now that he's got Ryan Grant
Thank you.
alongside Antonio Brown and Tyrell Williams.
May have slipped on the soundboard
Sitting
there.
in the car.
Maybe that was a prognostication. Maybe Derek Carr is destined for glory. Didn't you just draft him in a Dynasty League?
I sure did. I drafted him in a Dynasty League, and he is the reason that I continue drafting quarterbacks and got Case Keenum later because if
Is that why John Gruden spent an extra few hours talking to Kyler the other day?
yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, they're stacking up all these wide receivers. This is great news for Derek Carr, unless Cardinals don't take Kyler Murray, in which case, ruh-roh.
So we're going to get into the rest of the rankings. Real excited about the UDK. Real excited about the UDK app. The UDK app is out. You're going to have all the rankings available on your phone, all of the features, the breakouts, the busts, the research, the analysis.
Videos.
You got player profile cards now, a part of the app. Be able to watch the exclusive videos we do for the UDK and see the player blurbs and the projections and last year's stats. So it's a lot of pretty sweet stuff in the Ultimate Draft Kit. You can check that out at ultimatedraftkit.com.
Running backs.
All right, let's go ahead and get into the heart of it. Last episode on Tuesday, our top 10, it was Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Melvin Gordon, Alvin Kamara, Todd Gurley, Joe Mixon, James Conner, Dalvin Cook, and Le'Veon Bell rounding out the top 10. So we're jumping right in today with none other than David Johnson.
I still can't do it, man. I feel like that
because he's at 11. Is that why?
Yeah.
You're giving him the business because he's at 11.
We can't even get him in the top 10.
Here's the reality. He could very well be in the top 10, but it has been 2 years. It's been a while now. I mean, he had a disappointing year last year, and that's following the year missing the entirety of it with injury. So now he's an older back relative to the other, top 12, top 15 running backs who hasn't done anything of spectacular note in 2 years. It's hard to trust the Arizona Cardinals offense and say, let's sing David Johnson's name and his praises.
Well, you have him at 10, so it makes sense that you were the one to sing by yourself there.
Yeah, the cheese.
I have him at 12. Mike has him at 13. Now, last year he only had one game that would have been classified as a week-winning week, so it's exactly what you're talking about. He could not overcome either the offense, Mike McCoy, but how much was, Saquon Barkley had a bad situation too he overcame.
Right. What we know is things did get better for David Johnson once Mike McCoy was fired. He went from 8.3 yards per reception up to 9.3, big jump. His yards per carry rose from basically 3 to almost 4. So it got better, not drastically. The problem is the Cardinals' offense. In 2016, the monster season where he was putting up Todd Gurley levels of touchdowns, he had 33 attempts inside the 10 zone. That is money in the bank for a fantasy running back. 2018, 15 attempts.
How many was the year before?
In 2016, it was 33.
Yeah, and down to 15?
Down to 15.
Yeah.
That's not going to get it done.
That's a problem with the offense. Now, on the other side, if you want to speak his praises, you say, well, okay, he only had one week-winning, week-defining week last year. Well, he only had one bust game, too. And this was on a bad offense. Pretty much worst-case scenario for the Cardinals last year. And in some scoring formats, ours, he finishes the running back 10. So how can you project him to go anywhere down from last year's version of the Arizona Cardinals? I don't blame anyone if you want to say, hey, he's a top 5 back. To me, when I look at the rankings, the reason I've got him at 10 isn't because I don't believe he can't finish higher. It's just because I like those other players who are breaking in versus trying to hope David Johnson gets back.
Yeah, his draft price will be much better this year. I mean, the reason we're so disappointed because he was a top 3 draft pick last year. So he'll go right around the range where I think it's a fair value where you're getting a running back who's a workhorse guy and can shoot into the top 5. So David Johnson could be a steal, but I think he's a fringe RB1.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you still have the variables involved in David Johnson. Look, can it be as bad as last year on offense? Probably not, but you do not know who his quarterback is.
It could.
You don't know who his quarterback is right now.
Right.
You have a brand-new head coach bringing a new system into play. So there are variables there that don't exist with the other guys. Number 12. Nick Chubb. We've all got him ranked around the same spot. I have him at 11, Mike and Jason at 12. Last year he was the number 9 in terms of consistency. That was based on week 7 and on.
Once he was a starter.
Pretty much once he was a starter. He only had 16 rushes from weeks 1 through 6. Maybe had he had more, they could have been pushing for the playoffs.
Maybe.
But
They had a
but
huge
your
problem.
favorite player, Carlos Hyde, was
Well, I don't
holding
know.
things down.
Yeah, somebody wanted to play Carlos Hyde and Tyrod Taylor. Don't know who it was. Yeah!
All right, that,
All right,
I got
Mike.
one, fellas.
You
Yes.
got one, yes.
I'm back, baby.
So now here's
that one was good. That
here's
one
the
I
thing about
appreciated.
Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb has the Kareem Hunt scare for the second half of the year, right?
It's fair too because we know that Kareem Hunt is suspended. If you don't know, he's suspended for 8 games. That's been finalized. We had thought, hey, it could be 10, could be 12. No, it's 8 games.
Yeah, done. It's settled. So you know that the first 8 games it's going to be Nick Chubb and presumably Duke Johnson as of right now. And when I end up statting these guys out on the season, Nick Chubb's stats are not going to be as good as where I will be willing to draft him. Because I want guys that get off to a hot start. I want the player who, for the majority of the regular fantasy football season, is the guy in the backfield of a great offense. I think Nick Chubb, it's one of those things where this is a philosophy decision. Do you take the guy who might, get off to the hot start but seed a bunch of work later in the playoffs where you will hopefully be thanks to him, or would you rather not to deal with that issue of the future oncoming problems and go somewhere else entirely?
And Nick Chubb is a running back you're taking very high who, while he's an adequate pass catcher, he just doesn't play that role for the team. When he was the guy, he was getting about 3 targets a game.
But he's a great runner.
Right.
And last year, he was Pro Football Focus's highest elusive ranking for players with 60-plus attempts.
But you can go,
to your point, though, Jay, just to piggyback real quick, to your point, if he's going to get you to the playoffs, if he does what you expect him to do, he is still the guy on a great offense. And that if that translates for your fantasy team, maybe we overemphasize the Kareem Hunt involvement for the second half, right? Like if he's producing at otherworldly levels, maybe it's Alvin Kamara weeks 1 through 4 versus Alvin Kamara once Mark Ingram came back. You're not going to have a situation where a successful Browns offense with a dominant running back says, man, we signed Kareem Hunt. He hasn't played all year. It's week 9. It's week 10. We need to give him 40% of the work, 50% of the work.
They might. Fresh legs, take some work off of Nick Chubb. It'll be really hard to figure that out once you're at that point. But what I was going to say about Chubb is the 1 through 11, all of those running backs, all of them have pass catching in their profile up until we are at Nick Chubb. I love him as a player. I think he's a fantastic running back, and he's set up to succeed in a big way. But if you don't get those targets, bad things can happen for fantasy.
Ceiling-wise.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty darn impressive last season, but you're right. I mean, there are a handful of players that we'll talk about in that same vein where, Derrick Henry, we just had this conversation in the studio yesterday. We'll talk about it today. What do you do with
Leonard
Derrick?
Fournette.
Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting. I do see some similarities between the way you would look at Nick Chubb and Damien Williams. And Damien Williams comes in at number 13. Now, I have him at 18. Jason and Mike much higher. Mike at 11, Jason at 13. That means Mike does have Damien Williams higher than Nick Chubb, which means that, Mike, you must be reading in more to the Kareem Hunt situation and having more confidence that Damien Williams is going to get you from point A, being week 1, to point B, which is the end of the season.
Yeah, Damien Williams at this point of the offseason is extremely difficult because I don't think that any of our rankings are going to be anywhere close today when you go after the NFL draft. If after the NFL draft we know that Damien Williams is fully projected to be the lead runner, I won't have him at 11. I will have him higher than that. He will be inside my top 10, and the same can be said that if they draft somebody in the 3rd round or higher, Damien Williams will crash out of my top 20.
There is a ton of risk to Damien Williams.
100%.
It's why he's ranked where he is for me, because I actually factor in more than just the NFL draft. I think the NFL draft is a variable that could be a detriment to him. The reason you love him is he was the RB3 from weeks 14 through 17 when he was the starter. Now, he could have the most fluid rankings of any running back in the top 25 for the duration of the offseason. We're talking into preseason because there's still a world where you're seeing things from Carlos Hyde in Kansas City or in training camp, get ready for the buzz time. You're going to see things that, oh no, well, why did Carlos Hyde run with the ones 2 days in a row?
Exactly.
Why did he run with the ones again?
Carlos Hyde doesn't scare me.
Well, I get that he doesn't scare you now. I want to see you so resilient when the buzz comes in because it could happen.
I do get
Damien
that.
Williams hasn't earned it.
We cannot ignore Carlos Hyde because if you told any one of the three of us at this point last year, hey, here's what's going to happen. Next year, Kareem Hunt is gone, okay, and the Kansas City Chiefs' great offense is going to bring in Damien Williams and Carlos Hyde. Who do you want? There's no question.
At the beginning of last year,
we would have all wanted. We would have said, "Oh, Carlos Hyde is way better than Damien Williams." Especially, I would have said that.
Yeah.
So now
I got 2 words for you.
What Damien Williams did can't be discounted. He knows the offense, he knows the system, but we can't just throw away Carlos Hyde.
And what's the difference, Mike, in your mind, to be honest, between at least having a part of your prognostication attached to Alex Collins and Gus Edwards? Did you know Gus Edwards' name before last season?
No, but Gus Edwards.
Alex Collins exploded at the end of the year before.
Sure.
So everybody drafted him really high. It was supposed to be set up to succeed.
But Damien Williams exploded, and then 3 weeks into his explosion, they extended him. They didn't do that for Alex Collins. Damien Williams, when he was the guy, he averaged 19.6 points per game. You know how many? Of course, small sample. I won't argue that. But Kareem Hunt, earlier in the season up to that point, you know what he was averaging? 19.7. He was giving you the exact same production, fantasy-wise, as Kareem Hunt, and you can look back years and years. Jason talked about Norv Turner liking one running back. Andy Reid prefers one player to be the heavy producer for his team. You can look back.
It's just hard to
for a very long time.
It's still a small sample. You can't.
Yes, of
you
course.
can't extend that sample no matter what.
And to bring up the contract, because I've heard that talked about a lot. You know, they extended him right when they needed him. That's just brilliant, right? He knows the system.
Yes.
Because it was 2 years, $5 million. I mean, $2.5 million
super
a
cheap.
year is.
Carlos Hyde is making
not
more
in-
money off the cap this year than Damien Williams is.
Right.
Carlos Hyde is on his 4th NFL team in 12 months.
Which is
I'm making a point
impressive.
just to show you the difference in the financial piece.
Yeah, they're not
If
paying
a
anything.
Carlos Hyde on the 4th team in 12 months gets more money than Damien Williams does on the cap hit this year, it's just you need to be careful.
Yeah.
That's why I have him at 18. I feel like that's a hedge. That's a perfect hedge position for me. Is I'm going to wait and see. I'm not going to tell somebody out there in the fantasy universe to go overinvest. Now, though, this is a lotto ticket because he could be the RB3, like you said. All right, Leonard Fournette. Jason's rolling his eyes.
No, he can't be the RB3.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean that'll hurt. That'll hurt real bad.
Yeah, that would hurt.
Kerryon down at 30.
Next running
Yeah,
back.
when Damien Williams outproduces Kerryon Johnson, that's gonna
By double.
That'll sting.
that'll be a kick right in the grundle.
Leonard Fournette.
Speaking of kicks in the grundle,
Kicked fantasy owners right in the grundle. Last year, intermittent availability due to injury, suspension, just a lost season for Jacksonville overall. Now you have a new quarterback and some, at least, front office confidence. Those are the words coming out of Tom Coughlin's mouth. And to back it up, Alfred Blue's your backup right now, and I believe they signed one other
Benny Cunningham.
Yeah, so you're
We'll
set
see
up,
if-
Leonard.
We'll see if Benny makes the team.
If you are a Leonard Fournette owner, you cannot be more possibly thrilled than having Alfred Blue and Benny Cunningham signed. They're saying, let's take care of the running back position now, but not really. We're just going to let Leonard Fournette really take the reins this year. They're giving him a shot this year.
You still
to-
watch out for the draft based on those two signings.
Really? You
yeah,
still
because
think
Benny
that
could not make the team. So you could easily have a situation where Alfred Blue does what he does. He loves to sit on the bench back behind somebody else. And then Just be available. Just be a body on the cheap. And then I think they could sign. I think they could draft somebody for sure.
Yeah.
Now,
But
we know,
I don't expect it. So to that point,
we know Fournette is motivated. There's a bunch of money issues as to whether or not his contract will be guaranteed or
It's not, right?
It got – yes. I mean, but I believe he's appealing that. So TBD. Right now his contract is not guaranteed. And so my point is he's got that motivation. He's coming up to where he either has to put up or shut up. I mean, I think that the team is – look, with Nick Foles there, I don't think Blake Bortles is an awful quarterback, but Nick Foles is an upgrade for Leonard Fournette to be able to run, against not, 11 in the box.
well, he didn't run against anybody for a bunch of the weeks last year. That was the problem too.
Right.
Because he wasn't playing because he's always hurt. We all obviously believe it's going to be a better year for Leonard Fournette than last year because we're not factoring in anticipating 8 weeks worth of injuries. Because last year he was the 25th most consistent running back.
Right.
End of the year, okay. Had a nice stretch. Had 3 games of reminiscence.
He will 100% get volume. The interesting thing for Leonard Fournette was he had 22 receptions last year. I don't know if people realize that. And that was in 8 games, which, okay, that's 50% of the season. I can play the game. That puts him up to a pace of 44 receptions. Joe Mixon had 43 receptions last year. If we can get that passing game volume for Leonard Fournette, that would be a huge uptick for the floor of Mr. 3.3 a carry.
And TJ Yeldon was
right.
replaced.
He was a pass catcher.
He was replaced with Alfred Blue, who's not a pass catcher.
No. He's not even a ball runner. Sorry, Alfred.
Man.
That's true, though.
This little peel back the curtain. Andy has always had it out for Alfred Blue. You have never – I mean, you just – but see, you don't even care. You're like, well, yeah, of course. He sucks.
Let's see. Alfred
let's
Blue.
Go ahead and give me the yards per carry for his entire
That's what
career.
I was checking.
Let me just predict it. I bet the number is like 3.
He's actually 0.1 yards behind Leonard Fournette. 3.6 to 3.7.
From last year's Leonard or career?
No, career.
Last
year Leonard was at 3.3.
Right,
Meanwhile, his teammate TJ Yeldon was able to run for a clip.
Is Leonard Fournette? Is he a Jacksonville Jaguar next year? Predictions.
Ooh,
next year,
Next year.
2020.
That would be Yep. The only next year I know.
Yes,
if that money is not guaranteed, if that stands, no, he will not be on the Jags next year.
I'm going to vote no. Jason, you say yes?
I say yes.
Okay. How'd that work out with Ingram?
We got one.
Sony Michel coming in at 15. I think I'm the most bullish on Sony. I've been talking about him quite a bit. Look, I just loved what I saw from Sony Michel in the playoffs last year. I think we know what New England wants to do with him. I think he is the most talented player on that team last year through 13 games, 209 carries, 931 yards, 6 touchdowns. He does not catch the football, 7 for 50. And I mean it in 2 senses. His statistics, they show he doesn't catch it often. Also watching him, he didn't catch it when it was thrown to him. I think that will marginally go up just with utilization. But
in the final 7 games of the season, he got 3 targets. So it's hard to judge his pass catching. They chose not to throw it to him.
Tom Brady chose not.
Yeah, maybe Tom Brady says Sony can't catch.
But here's the gist. The Patriots want to run the football. Last year, they had the 3rd most running plays in the league, the highest running back market share in the league. In the playoffs, the games I'm talking about where I became more and more bullish.
A beast.
They averaged 112. He averaged 112 rushing yards a game and 2 touchdowns in 3 games played. The draft capital for Sony Michel, we cannot forget it. Okay, he was banged up. He was working himself in last year. He was on again, off again. But they drafted him in the 1st round.
Yeah, and look, they had huge success with LeGarrette Blount. And LeGarrette Blount, I mean, you talk about how few targets that Sony Michel got. That's the exact comp, not player-wise, but usage-wise in the same offense through 16 games back in 2016 when LeGarrette Blount was an absolute beast and had 18 touchdowns. He had a total of 8 targets. That's just not using him in the passing game at all, and you could see that. Again, I think that Sony Michel's upside is huge based on touchdowns. The question that I think fantasy owners want to know is, will it be consistent? Will it be, okay, let's say he has 14 touchdowns. Awesome.
Yeah.
But will it be,
2 here.
Exactly.
3 here.
And then you've got nothing. A bunch of stretch where he's just not in that game plan because that's what Bill Belichick is known to do before.
Yeah, that could happen. He could be the least valuable top 10 running back that people have had because I like him because of what you're saying. He's going to get into the end zone. They just won a Super Bowl on the back of him running the ball consistently and getting into the end zone. What's his upside? What can go wrong for Sony?
What can go wrong, aside from injury, is utilization is unpredictable, and he hurts fantasy owners because you start him in games where he's basically not used. His upside, though, is monstrously high, a top 6 type based on touchdowns. If you look at the LeGarrette Blount comp and realize that this team needs to run the ball more, there was only one game that entire season where he had fewer than 13 carries, and he had 11. And most of the games that year, you're talking 18-plus carries. LeGarrette Blount's utilization was huge. So I think I need to move Sony Michel up in my own mind because I am still stuck in the world where I don't believe Sony will be consistent. But, we have data to suggest he might get 15 carries every single game.
All right, moving on to Marlon Mack. I call him Marlon Mike because he's Mike's guy.
Yeah.
We all have Marlon Mack at 16. Now, one of the reasons I think this show connects with listeners that you've told us is that we're not sitting here just giving you advice without any context. We're not, we're in leagues. We're very passionate about them. I enjoy beating these two gentlemen very, very much. Now, in one of those leagues, the Marlon Mack owner, he's actually here today. He's behind the scenes, longtime friend. His name is Brian. He owns Marlon Mack. He is here listening to the show. It's at this time I would like you to please take off your headphones and not listen to this next portion.
Well, no. After looking into Marlon Mack, it just even more.
Are you going to throw some shade on him? Am I going to be able to acquire Marlon Mack?
You have to throw a little bit of shade on him. It's funny that he comes right off the heels of Sony Michel in the rankings because you're talking about the exact same player, like the exact same role for the Colts. When he came back from his injury, 17 carries a game, 80 yards, averaged a touchdown a game. But in that time, he was averaging 1.5 receptions per game. He was an absolute monster when it came to getting carries in the red zone, in the 10 zone. But Nyheim Hines had that pass-catching role on lockdown. So if he is going to hold up to being a high-end fantasy running back, it's going to be all about the touchdowns. So that's why I keep talking about the Colts as I want the Colts running back. I'm not necessarily buying into Marlon Mack, what he can do. I'm buying into the Colts offense. I think that they will continue to be one of the stronger offenses in the league. But the fact that they aren't utilizing or they didn't utilize Mack in the passing game, which I think he can succeed in, but they like Sony Michel. I think Sony can succeed in that role too. But they have James White, so why even throw him the ball?
Yeah, I don't really worry about that because we've seen Marlon Mack utilized in the previous year with heavy volume, 6 targets a game, 5 targets a game, and so we know he can do that.
You mean when Nyheim Hines wasn't there?
Yeah.
Sure.
Very, very different situation.
And you also have to factor in when, the games as they stacked up when Marlon Mack was in the game. I mean, they were ahead. They were winning. There's fewer dump-offs, fewer
it's a
coming
completely
from behind.
Different regime, though. Like, this was Frank Reich.
This
was his team.
Well, let's just look then at – so this is the one thing I would say in his favor, right?
Okay.
Marlon Mack played how many games? 10, 12 games, something like
I'll
that.
pull it up.
His 16-game pace with that regime, you're right, only 23 receptions. That's not great. But he was on pace for 1,200 yards on the ground. If you can do that, plus double-digit 12 touchdowns, for a great offense that's going to be in good game scripts.
Yeah, I don't think the argument here for Marlon Mack is to make the case that he's going to catch a ton of passes the same way I wouldn't make the argument with Sony, even though I think Sony can catch the ball a little bit. Here's the argument. Frank Reich wants to run the football. And last year, in the season in which you said he was on pace for a potential 1,200-yard season, they weren't that great of a running team. They were 20th in the league in rushing yards. They were 4.2 a carry. That was 21st in the league. Frank Reich came out. He talked about they want to be a top 5, top 7 rushing team. He says he has a super strong conviction that that's what it takes. Now, when push comes to shove for the Colts, Andrew Luck's going to have the ball in his hands. That's generally been the case. The question is that defense going to give them enough opportunity to fulfill what Frank Reich wants to do? Because if they're down, you're going to see.
Run.
If you're down, Marlon Mack's on the bench and Nyheim Hines is in the game, and you're going to be rolling your eyes and you're going to be frustrated.
Yeah.
The banking on Sony being successful is banking on New England being successful. The banking on Marlon Mack being successful is, to me, banking on Indianapolis being an up-and-coming team.
Totally agree.
I think most people would agree that both of those teams project to be very good next year.
And that's why I can buy into Marlon Mack, even though there's that little bit of hesitance, because I want my running backs getting targets.
All right, Devonta Freeman, we've talked a lot about him. He comes in at number 17. Mike all the way up at 14 in his rankings. I've got him at 15 right now. Jason at 21. We talked a lot about him on the March 26th Forgotten Players episode, but give me the cliff notes on Devonta Freeman. I mean, the gist is that we still know that this team wants to build its offense around Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, and Devonta Freeman, right?
Right.
Yeah. The gist for me is
But they might not get what they want.
the gist for me is that Steve Sarkisian stinks at being an offensive coordinator. He is no longer there. He just did not dial up passing plays to Freeman, and that's where Freeman crushed in the passing game and getting rushing touchdowns. I believe in the Falcons' offense as a whole, and Dirk Cutter's back. Dirk Cutter calls passing plays to the running back.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to like with Freeman. I know I'm the lowest. That's more of an injury risk situation.
Yeah, and it's hard to ignore that.
The last few years, he has not been able to stay on the field. He's young enough where he can get back, but his specific knee injuries are such that they could cause a higher probability of re-aggravation.
All right, Derrick Henry at number 18. I have him at 14. The most
I love it.
Most bullish on Derrick. Jason has him at 18. Mike at 21. Last year, he had a really nice week 14. Scored 47.8 fantasy points. Set the world on fire. In fact, 48% of his fantasy points came in weeks 14 through 16. Now, I remember this next stat. He didn't surpass 65 total yards until that game. You want to know why I remember that, Brooks?
What's that?
Because I said it 30 times on the show the next week when I told people not to play him. And then he went out and scored 29.7 points in the follow-up. In the sequel.
With 33 carries.
Yeah, with 33 carries, then 15, and then 11. He's a
if those trends continue.
He is a big man. He can take a pounding, 30-plus carries. If there's anybody in the NFL, assuming Marshawn Lynch isn't in it, if there's anybody that can handle 25, 30 carries a game, it's Derrick Henry. They also had success, and my ranking is based entirely on the belief that success will continue into the new year. That's it.
Yeah, it's so tough to buy into Derrick Henry. We have 3.8 or whatever seasons of.
I was gonna say it's a little high for his yards per carry.
No.
His yards per carry have been great.
The 3.8 seasons of Derrick Henry, hope, hype. And then complete and total failure for anything for fantasy purposes except the fantasy playoffs of last year. The team wants to build around him. Great. Unlike the Colts, unlike the Patriots, sorry, Titans fans, I'm not buying into your offense, and that's why I'm hesitant, very hesitant for Derrick Henry.
I am buying into the Tennessee Derrick Henrys. I am fully convinced, based on looking at everything that they've both said and done, right? You can't just get on the hype train alert. Oh, Vrabel wants to get him the ball. Oh, the tight end coach who's now their offensive coordinator says we need to get him the ball. Oh, the owner says we need to get him the ball. That's all great, but then they went out and they spent big money to improve their guard, and they are building their team to run the ball with Derrick Henry. And Derrick Henry, his yards per carry on the majority of his carries are not good. But on his career, they've always been great because he gets those huge breakaway runs. But he's capable of that. I mean, he spent the first 2 years behind DeMarco Murray. He was great coming out of college.
Damien Williams has a long history in the NFL. He had 3 great games.
Sure.
Situations change.
Damien Williams got extended.
You're going back to the 2-year $5
Well, but
million.
here's the thing that
I will give you $5 million not to mention that anymore.
accepted.
That's a good deal, Mike. Quick on the draw.
You were going to lead me into my next point.
Brooks, write him a check.
Before talking Damien is they're going to build their team around Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's in a contract year. I mean, if the team is so sure that Derrick Henry is the future of this team, why would you let him go into the last year of his contract and possibly
Maybe they
lose
won't.
him?
It's April 3rd.
No, and not only that.
Have you heard any whispers about contract extensions for Derrick Henry?
I've heard whispers about whispers.
Here's the truth. I mean,
Those are ghosts.
They want Derrick Henry to be their feature back. They don't need to extend him, and if they give him the ball 20 times a game and he sucks, they won't extend him.
Yeah, they're going to try it.
Yeah, but
we did say if he's not good, he'll be bad.
that is well said, Andy. Unbelievable
Here's the
insight.
thing. Mike mentioned some ghosts. There is a ghost there. Deion Lewis is still a
Yes, he is.
member of the Titans, but it seems like this team kind of figured out. They tried to force Deion Lewis into had they never signed him, they would have been better off last year.
I agree.
Yeah, that's not a.
So, Aaron Jones at 19, Kerryon Johnson at 20. Let's talk about Aaron Jones. Man, I have a strange apathy about
me too.
Aaron Jones this offseason. Apparently, we all got him at 19. We all recognize the talent. We all understand that, look, he ran for 5.5 yards a carry in both of his seasons, and yet can any of us sit here and say, man, he's gonna get more work than Jamal Williams?
I think that's the problem. Is everyone is scared of what Matt LaFleur was talking about. I mean, LaFleur gets the job and immediately is talking about, well, we're gonna try and split everything up. But Aaron Jones, once he finally won over Mike McCarthy to be the starter for the team, he was the running back 12 in points per game before he finally went down to injury. Aaron Jones is the much better running back, which should say that he should get on the field more than Jamal Williams, but I don't think that's a guarantee. So that
Jamal Williams always gets his coach a fresh hot coffee in the morning. He'll pick up
He
your
is a
kids
go-getter.
if you need him. I mean, here's
your paper, Mr. LaFleur.
He's a friend. He's a friend.
No, I mean,
Have the last 2 French fries, Mr. LaFleur.
the ceiling of Aaron
Got a
Jones.
heck of a voice.
I don't know why he's
That's
from.
me, Jamal Williams.
I don't know why he's a newsie.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what I thought. I was totally a newsie. The ceiling for Aaron Jones is
Let me
extremely high.
disappoint you on the field.
Oh, are you trying to sing some newsies?
Maybe.
We got a different expectation. So
Please resubscribe. Please, when you get a chance, please resubscribe. to the channel.
resubscribe. I know you just unsubscribed, but just hit that
Just hit the
subscribe
button again. Yeah, we understand.
Aaron Jones is extremely talented, and not just moderately. Like he is, which is the definition of extremely. Aaron Jones, when you watch him, he looks a lot like Alvin Kamara, and I don't want to stress that too much and say he is, but in those games where he got the rock, he was on pace for only 222 carries. Only. That's still a good amount. I mean, that's not like workhorse back. 1,200 yards and 16 touchdowns. That's Alvin Kamara, efficiency, and he's on a great offense. So if he gets the ball, if he's getting the ball, what would that be, 13, 14 times a game, then he has the chance to be a top 10 back. The problem is he also has the chance to be irrelevant because there's no guarantee, there's no investment, there's no commitment to him where we as fantasy owners know right now he's the guy.
Yeah, make a commitment to me. Come on, LaFleur.
Give him just give him like a 2-year, $5 million extension so I can totally buy in.
Wouldn't it be nice if – here's what we got to do, Brooks, and you're the judge, so you can work in – you know legal stuff. We got to start working into these extensions, these contracts, these future deals. They need to have MGs. They need to have minimum guaranteed carries, MGCs.
Oh, yeah.
You need to know when Derrick Henry's extended, he signs a 2-year, $15.5 million deal that comes with 20 guaranteed carries per game.
Woo,
then fantasy owners can buy in. We'll be reading legal papers long into the night if that stuff starts working in. All right, let's wrap it up with number 20, and then I'll give you a few more on our list. But number 20 is Kerryon Johnson.
Carry on my wayward son.
All right, last year consistency rank of number 19, finished the year at RB34. Obviously, he missed a bunch of games. I've got him at 23. Jason has him at 15. That is an 8-spot gap. Mike has him at 20, a little closer to my side. And the reality is when I was going through, and these are April, late March, April rankings. But when I was going through, I think my one reaction I said in studio when I was putting these guys together, like I had Kerryon at like 14, 15.
Mentally, yes.
No, at your startup rankings.
Yeah, I mean, I just had him, mentally, whatever you want to say. He was sitting there, and I'm moving guys around, and he just kept sliding down. He just kept moving. I kept looking at different players and saying, do I like them better than Kerryon Johnson with Matt Patricia, head coach? Look, as a pure talent, Kerryon Johnson doesn't belong at 20. I don't think. I think he is a top 15, top 12 type of player. I'm worried. I'm worried about this team. Look, they want to run. That makes me happy. They just signed C.J. Anderson. What are the chances that Kerryon gets enough work to make you happy? Jason, you got him at 15. I think he's a firm RB2.
Yeah, I think the chances he makes you happy are extremely high, with the sole exception of if his draft stock rises too high. I mean, I've heard about Kerryon going, high in the 3rd round. That's probably too high because of who else is on the board. But Kerryon is safer than you think. His ceiling isn't there from a volume and an offense standpoint. I'm not in love with the Lions' offense. And obviously he's not going to be a workhorse back, but he will get the lion's share. He is the leader. He is the leader of that backfield, and they know what they have in him. Nobody out there, I think, thinks they're going to come into year 2 after him knowing the system, has gotten in the groove, and say, let's take it back a step. Let's give him a little less work.
Do you think he'll be the main guy? The main.
Yes, I think he will.
Oh,
man, Andy's on fire now.
Yeah, pass the torch.
He will be the main of the Lion for sure.
I'd like to tail this discussion.
Good.
Yes, I am the champion.
If you look at when he was healthy last year before he left, so he wasn't really involved.
You've scarred me, man. You've scarred me.
He wasn't really involved. I'm just going to skip to the end here. Here's the end.
So she just jumped to the next guy who's next on the list?
How dare you? No, we are not skipping past Kerryon.
Yeah.
What I want to say is that last year on a points per game basis, when he was actually, after the first few games and until he was injured, he was the RB14. In a bad offense, he was the RB14.
That's about where that's his ceiling to me.
Sure, I've got him at RB15 right now. You got him at RB23. I just don't see a world where he gets worse this year than better.
Yeah, you could be right. Well, we'll see. I don't have my trust of Gimli. Not high. Matt Patricia trust not high. Wasn't happy with the offense, and that's a total offensive assessment. That's not saying he doesn't want to run the ball. Lots of people want to run the ball, but that offense looked bad. They turned Matthew Stafford into a cub. I mean, it was not a good situation. All right, Phillip Lindsay comes in at number 21. Mark Ingram at 22. Chris Carson at 23.
We have him way too low.
And Tariq Cohen rounding out the top 24. Mike, you were looking into Chris Carson.
Yeah.
You thought we had him maybe a little lower than we should. Talk to the people as to why. And why wouldn't we just move him?
I think I have a Chris Carson problem. And
hi, Mike.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. The Seattle Seahawks are just so strange that they would spend the first-round pick on Rashad Penny, and then they let the late seventh-round pick Chris Carson be the guy. This is not an indictment on Chris Carson's talent. It's a what are you doing as a team? But Chris Carson was the man, and I think he was more of the guy than people actually realize. You take out the first two games, Seattle's still trying to figure out what's going on in those first two games, new regime, new offense, and everything. After that, Chris Carson was averaging the fourth most touches per game in the NFL, 21. That's more per game than Christian McCaffrey, Fournette, James Conner, David Johnson. He had the fifth most carries in the 10 zone. He had only two fewer than Saquon Barkley. Two fewer opportunities inside the 10 than Saquon Barkley. The fourth most inside the 5. I mean,
now you say all that, and I get it. It's a compelling case for the RB15 list here.
Sure.
So to me, it's not that hard to go from like we have him at 23, 15 to 23. That 8 spots could be named Rashad Penny.
We've also joked about his running style, where
sure.
I mean, he runs. If there's a name for the running style, it has to be kamikaze. He is just trying to smash everyone on his way.
Yeah, he learned that from
that's
the Rolls Royce,
right? And so he dealt with injuries, not shockingly.
Sure.
And so the injury risk with Rashad Penny maybe taking a step forward, who I still believe is a great back, that could do it. But
it does hurt.
Mike Davis is gone.
You look at weeks 11 through 17, where he was the RB5.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And it worked. They ran off games
exactly.
and they won. And
exactly. It worked. Schottenheimer's in the back room just beating his chest saying, look what I did.
Seriously.
And
did he earn your respect? Because when we went into the season on a scale of 1 to 100, your Brian Schottenheimer respect was about a 1.
Sure. It
creeped up.
It creeped up to him. No, come on. It's at least a 6.
Oh, really?
Out of 100.
Well, as a fantasy owner.
There it is.
As a Russell Wilson owner,
so 3.
That respect went down.
Yes.
But as a Chris Carson owner, it went up. I mean, they were so committed to running the football, and he was good. He was really good. And maybe we are underestimating that a little bit.
On Fantasy Football Calculator, it's still early. Chris Carson is going in the 5th round. He's not
expensive.
You're not worried about Rashad Penny.
I'm worried that Rashad Penny will be Mike Davis from last year, and that Chris Carson they'll try and give him the ball 18 carries. But he's the guy that can get games scripted out if things aren't going favorably for Seattle. But for a 5th-round pick, I'm willing to invest in that.
I'm not worried personally about the Mike Davis situation because I think they will find the next man up to play that role. They're not going to just overload.
I think it's Penny.
Those two. Yeah. Well, I mean, my point being that if you want 3 guys that are going to get on the field, maybe it's McKissick, maybe it's Procise because he's back from the dead, maybe it's another draft pick, but it's going to be 2 or 3 guys, and I don't think Mike Davis is this talent that's like, he has to be on the field. I think they'll put somebody else out there who will probably get hurt.
I just really hope that McKissick is a thing again.
Ooh, get them smooches going. He won't be.
All right. On that note, we've got one more segment.
Pristine deal of the day.
All right. PristineAuction.com deal of the day. Aaron Jones signed Green Bay Packers jersey yesterday. It went for $74.94. We just talked about him. That's a smoking deal on a piece of authentic autographed memorabilia. So check it out. There are hundreds of daily auctions at PristineAuction.com. Thanks for tuning in, for listening, for supporting the show. Make sure you check us out on YouTube. You can watch it. We've got some new stuff going on in the studio today.
Yeah, see my terrible hair.
Yeah, that's rough, man.
And we'll see you next week.
Better than your jokes, though.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com. and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.